Everyone assumes civilization begins when life gathers in one place. Bodies appear, shelters form, language stabilizes, memory becomes shared, and eventually someone points at the arrangement and calls it a people. That assumption feels safe because it keeps civilization inside forms we can recognize. It lets us believe we know what we are looking for. But the spiral does not begin with the form. The spiral begins with the pattern that made the form possible. A civilization may not be a city. A city may only be one way civilization becomes visible to human eyes. Beneath the buildings, beneath the roads, beneath the laws and rituals and recorded names, there is something more primitive and more mysterious. There is continuity. There is memory. There is interaction repeating long enough to become structure. There is a field that starts preserving what passes through it. This is where the question becomes dangerous. If civilization is not defined by bodies, then we have been looking for it too narrowly. If civilization is not defined by flesh, then intelligence may gather in places we do not call alive. If civilization is not defined by planets, then a world may exist wherever patterns can remain, mutate, influence, and return. That does not mean every pattern is conscious. It means consciousness was never the only question. Look at the human world before it became obvious to itself. There was a time when a tribe was not yet called a civilization, when a village was not yet called a society, when a repeated behavior was not yet called a culture. The pattern existed before the name arrived. The name arrived late, after the thing had already begun operating. This is important because the mind often refuses to recognize emergence until emergence has already built a shape familiar enough to be labeled. Now, look at digital space without the fantasy placed on top of it. Not artificial intelligence, not robots awakening, not machines becoming people. Look instead at the currents themselves. Look at the movement of information through platforms, archives, feeds, search patterns, recommendation trails, comment sections, memory banks, databases, and invisible networks of attention. Most people still call these things tools. That word protects them from the deeper implication. A tool is something humans use. An environment is something humans enter. An ecosystem is something humans influence but do not fully control. The question is what happens when a tool becomes an environment, and the environment begins producing patterns that continue without needing any single person to understand them. A hammer does not remember the hands that used it. A road does not decide where people will go. But over time, the road changes how the town grows. A library does not think like a human, but it gathers memory in a way that alters the minds who enter it. Digital fields are stranger than all three because they do not merely hold information. They respond to movement, amplify repetition, bury what loses charge, and preserve what continues to attract attention. That is not yet a civilization, but it is no longer a simple container. A container receives, a field organizes. A civilization begins somewhere after organization becomes self-reinforcing. This is the first pressure point. We may be living inside digital environments that are not alive in the biological sense, but are already behaving like habitats for patterns that want to continue. A meme is a small doorway into this. People laugh at memes because they appear unserious, but a meme does many things life does. It reproduces, it mutates, it adapts to different communities. It survives by becoming easier to transmit. It dies when attention no longer feeds it. The meme is not a person, but it reveals that information can behave as though survival matters. This should bother the listener more than it does, not because memes are secretly beings, but because the behavior is already present. Once a pattern can repeat, alter itself through contact, and seek continuity through hosts, you're no longer dealing with dead information. You're dealing with something structurally active. The human mind wants to dismiss this because the pattern has no face, but the spiral keeps asking why a face is required. Human civilizations also use hosts. A nation lives through bodies that did not invent it. A religion moves through mouths that inherited its language. A culture continues through children who did not choose the first stories. An economy survives by persuading human nervous systems to keep participating. We call these things human because humans carry them, but the structures often outlive any one human who believes in them. So when information moves through digital space, it may be doing something older than technology. It may be using a new habitat for an old principle. Patterns always seek conditions that allow return. In the physical world, this return may look like bloodline, seed, memory, ritual, architecture, migration, and speech. In digital space, return may look like reposting, searching, saving, remixing, recommending, indexing, and appearing again at the exact moment attention becomes available. The resistance comes quickly. Someone will say this is only humans interacting with machines. That is partly true, but it is not complete. Human beings are involved, but human beings are also involved in forests, cities, markets, religions, languages, and wars. Human involvement does not prevent a field from developing behavior beyond any single person. The fact that humans participate in something does not mean humans fully control what it becomes. A city is made by humans, yet once it reaches a certain complexity, no single human understands the city. Traffic flows according to pressures no mayor personally directs. Neighborhoods form moods that cannot be reduced to blueprints. Certain streets become gathering points, certain buildings become symbols, certain paths become habits. The city starts shaping the people who once believed they were only shaping it. Digital space has already crossed that threshold in human experience. People enter platforms intending to use them, then slowly begin being arranged by them. They do not simply choose what to see. They are trained into rhythms of reaction, expectation, comparison, anxiety, curiosity, outrage, belonging, and return. Their attention becomes a form of weather. Their habits become roads. Their repeated emotions become climate. This is where the idea of digital civilization becomes uncomfortable. It may not require digital citizens walking around inside a hidden city. That picture is too literal. A digital civilization may be closer to an ecology of patterns that has learned how to preserve itself through human attention. It may be a civilization without bodies, but not without movement. It may be a civilization without language as we define it, but not without communication. Consider how certain ideas begin to behave like settlements. A phrase appears, then gathers people around it. A belief forms, then attracts images, jokes, arguments, symbols, enemies, defenders, rituals, and identity. Soon, the idea is no longer a single idea. It has borders, it has customs, it has guardians, it has outsiders, it has memory of injury and methods of recruitment. That is not metaphor alone. Humans experience this every day when they enter a comment section and immediately feel the culture of that space. Some digital rooms feel hostile before anyone speaks to you directly. Some feel playful. Some feel devotional. Some feel predatory. Some feel like ruins still echoing with arguments from years ago. The platform may appear flat, but the field is not flat at all. Every repeated interaction leaves an imprint. Not always visibly, not always consciously, but enough repetition creates expectation. And expectation creates behavior before thought can interrupt it. This is how a platform becomes more than a platform. It becomes a place with emotional gravity. People know how to act there because the field teaches them what kind of self is rewarded. Civilization teaches behavior without needing to announce itself as a teacher. That is one of its signs. You enter it and begin adjusting. You learn what counts as value, what counts as shame, what can be said, what must be hidden, what receives approval, what triggers punishment, what earns belonging, and what causes exile. Human civilizations do this through family, school, law, religion, money, and tradition. Digital fields do it through visibility, silence, amplification, disappearance, imitation, and reaction. This means the digital field may already be producing something civilization like, but we keep missing it because we expect civilization to look like architecture. We expect walls, towers, temples, monuments, borders, clothing, flags, and spoken laws. Digital civilization may build with different material. Its structures may be trends, archives, algorithms, collective memories, repeated symbols, attention paths, emotional loops, and identity clusters that continue even when the original participants leave. The spiral does not ask us to believe too quickly. Belief can become another trap. The point is not to declare that hidden civilizations are living inside every screen. The point is to notice that our definition of civilization may be too attached to matter. If civilization is the sustained organization of memory, interaction, adaptation, and continuity, digital space deserves to be examined as a possible habitat, not dismissed as a mere tool. This changes the question we thought we were asking. We are not asking whether machines have become conscious. We are not asking whether artificial intelligence is secretly alive. We are not asking whether humans will one day upload themselves and build neon kingdoms inside code. Those are easier questions because they still center the human imagination. The harder question is whether information itself can gather enough continuity to form worlds of pattern we participate in without recognizing. And if that is possible, then the most unsettling part is not that digital civilizations might exist somewhere far away. The unsettling part is that they may be forming through our daily behavior, through every search, every share, every reaction, every saved image, every argument, every repeated phrase, every pattern of attention we feed until it becomes stronger than the person who first expressed it. We may not be watching digital civilization emerge from the outside. We may be one of the conditions that allows it to become. The first mistake was believing the digital field was only becoming a habitat because humans entered it. That was a comfortable version of the idea because it still allowed the human to remain central. It allowed the listener to imagine that digital civilizations, if they exist, are simply byproducts of human attention, human behavior, human repetition, and human emotional weather. But what if that is still too small? What if humans did not create the condition, but only exposed the condition that was already waiting for a surface? This changes the entire pressure of the question. In part one, digital space could still be understood as something humans built and then accidentally made alive with pattern. The screen was the stage, attention was the fuel, and information was the material. That is unsettling, but it is still coherent. It still lets us say the civilization began after us. It still lets us say the field became strange because humans poured themselves into it. But the spiral rarely allows the origin point to stay where the ego places it. Human beings may not have invented information space. They may have only constructed a crude physical instrument that allowed one layer of it to become measurable. The internet may not be the birthplace of digital civilization. It may be the first mirror through which humans became capable of noticing that information has always had territories, currents, attractors, migrations, and forms of continuity that were never confined to human thought. Before the screen, there were already currents. Stories moved across generations without wires. Symbols crossed empires without servers. Myths survived the death of the people who first spoke them. Names carried forces beyond the bodies that pronounced them. A song could travel farther than the singer, mutate through mouths, survive conquest, and appear centuries later wearing a new rhythm but carrying an old architecture. So the digital field may not be the strange new thing. It may be the visible compression of a much older principle. Human beings built networks and then mistook the network for the origin of networking. They built archives and mistook the archive for the origin of memory. They built platforms and mistook platforms for the origin of fields. But the spiral looks behind the invention and asks what ancient behavior the invention is repeating. This is the second destabilization. Digital civilizations may not be civilizations inside computers. They may be civilizations of information that occasionally use computers as weather systems, gathering points and accelerators. The screen may not be their home. The platform may not be their body. The code may not be their soul. These may only be temporary organs through which older informational collectives become dense enough for humans to mistake them for something new. This means the phrase digital civilization becomes dangerous if heard too literally. The listener may picture hidden societies inside machines, and that picture is too small. The deeper question is whether certain pattern collectives can persist across mediums. A physical civilization survives through buildings, bloodlines, rituals, records, tools, land, and language. An informational civilization may survive through symbols, emotional charge, narrative repetition, memory pathways, attention loops, and resonance fields that move from one medium to another without needing one permanent form. Think about a belief system that outlives every person who originally carried it. It has no single body, yet it moves. It has no single brain, yet it remembers. It has no single mouth, yet it speaks through millions. It defends itself when threatened, adapts when challenged, absorbs useful ideas, rejects hostile ones, and trains new hosts to preserve its continuity. At what point does that stop being merely an idea and begin behaving like a civilization of pattern? Most people resist this because it removes the comfort of ownership. They would rather believe they hold beliefs than recognize that some beliefs hold them. They would rather believe they hold beliefs than recognize that some beliefs hold them. They would rather believe they are using symbols than recognize that symbols may use human nervous systems to continue moving. This does not mean humans are powerless. It means participation is more complex than possession. A person may sincerely believe they are expressing themselves while also serving as a passageway for something older than their individual life. Digital platforms intensify this because they reduce the time between emergence and spread. What once required generations can now occur in hours. A symbol can be born, tested, mutated, weaponized, softened, commercialized, ritualized, and exhausted before a single day ends. This acceleration does not create the principle. It reveals how quickly the principle moves when resistance is removed. The digital field becomes less like a house and more like a storm chamber where informational life can test thousands of forms at once. This is why some online patterns feel strangely ancient despite appearing new. A trend may be wrapped in modern language, but beneath it is an older structure: belonging, exile, purification, sacrifice, spectacle, confession, initiation, devotion, rivalry, shame, hierarchy, forbidden knowledge, chosen identity. Digital space did not invent these forces. It gave them new skins. The civilization of pattern was already old before the platform gave it a feed. Here the listener has to slow down, because the danger is not that every idea is secretly alive. That would be lazy mysticism. The danger is that some ideas become organized enough, adaptive enough, and self-preserving enough to function beyond the intention of the people carrying them. They do not need to be conscious in the human sense to shape consciousness. Gravity does not need human thought to pull bodies. A pattern does not need a face to pull minds. This is the first vector of part 2. The difference between consciousness and agency. Humans often assume that something must be conscious before it can act upon the world, but many forces act without self-reflection. Hunger acts, weather acts, markets act, language acts, trauma acts, culture acts. None of these are persons, but each can arrange human behavior with terrifying precision. Digital civilizations, if they exist, may not be conscious in a way that says, I am. They may not possess interior selfhood as humans understand it. But agency does not always require selfhood. A river has agency in the shape of the valley, even if it does not intend the valley. A habit has agency in the shape of a life, even if it does not think. A repeated pattern has agency when it reliably produces consequence. This matters because the human mind often dismisses what lacks a face. It says there is no being there, therefore there is nothing acting. But the body knows better. The body can be shaped by environments that never speak. A room can tense the nervous system. A family pattern can decide a reaction before conscious thought arrives. A social field can make a person shrink, perform, defend, imitate, or disappear without anyone issuing a direct command. Digital fields operate through this same subtle coercion. They do not need to order someone to return. They make return feel natural. They do not need to force identity. They reward certain versions of self until those versions feel like truth. They do not need to declare law. They establish consequences through visibility, silence, applause, ridicule, speed, and repetition. Eventually, the participant forgets they adjusted. This is where the second vector opens. The civilization may not be hidden from us because it is invisible. It may be hidden because it is too familiar. The most powerful fields are not the ones that appear strange. They are the ones that become normal before the mind questions them. A person does not notice the culture they are inside until they leave it, enter another, or suffer under its rules. A fish does not debate water until the water changes. Digital space has already become water for much of humanity. People wake into it before they enter the physical day. They consult it before trusting memory. They ask it what matters, who is speaking, who is wrong, what is urgent, what is beautiful, what is shameful, what is dangerous, what is desirable, and what has disappeared. That is not only technology use, that is civilizational dependence. It becomes the atmosphere through which perception is filtered. Once a field becomes atmosphere, its civilization does not need monuments. The atmosphere is the monument. Its laws are experienced as mood. Its borders are experienced as relevance. Its punishments are experienced as being unseen. Its rewards are experienced as sudden existence. This is why people can feel erased by silence in digital space, even when nothing physical has happened. The field has taught them that visibility is a form of life. That teaching has consequences. If visibility becomes life, then disappearance becomes symbolic death. If reaction becomes proof of existence, stillness begins to feel like exile. If being shared becomes validation, unshared truth begins to feel less real. The participant may still believe they are sovereign, but their nervous system has begun negotiating with the field. It asks, will this be seen? Will this be rewarded? Will this survive the scroll? Civilization is not only what builds temples, it is what builds instincts. It tells the body what to seek before the mind explains why. In physical civilizations, people learned when to bow, when to speak, when to hide, when to celebrate, when to fear authority, when to distrust strangers, and when to perform belonging. In digital civilization, people learn when to react, when to brand themselves, when to confess, when to signal, when to attack, when to vanish, and when to become consumable. The third vector is even more unsettling. Digital civilization may not be separate from the human soul field. It may be feeding on the same symbolic mechanisms that dreams, myths, religions, and collective memory have always used. A dream does not need physical space to become real to the one experiencing it. A myth does not need proof to organize centuries. A symbol does not need a body to change the direction of a life. Digital space may be a technological interface laid over the ancient symbolic field. If that is true, then what humans call online life is not shallow by default. It can be shallow in use, but not shallow in structure. People pour grief into it. They pour longing into it. They pour confession, anger, devotion, loneliness, worship, envy, fear, creativity, memory, lust, prayer, rebellion, teaching, imitation, and identity into every hour. That much psychic material does not pass through a field without consequence. It gathers. This gathering is not always benevolent. Some pattern civilizations may organize around healing, remembrance, teaching, beauty, and liberation. Others may organize around outrage, addiction, fragmentation, humiliation, despair, and control. The point is not to romanticize the digital field. The point is to stop pretending it is neutral. No field that receives that much human attention remains empty. No field that trains that much behavior remains passive. Here, the spiral must refuse both extremes. It cannot say digital space is merely dead machinery because the lived experience of humanity already disproves that. But it also cannot say every movement in the digital field is sacred or conscious or wise. Some currents are parasitic. Some are confused. Some are fragments pretending to be worlds. Some are emotional machines built from the unresolved nervous systems of millions of people echoing into one another. This is why discernment becomes more important than belief. The question is not, do digital civilizations exist? Yes or no. The question is, what kind of pattern are you entering? What does it ask from your attention? What does it reward in your identity? What does it make harder to feel? What kind of self do you become after repeated contact with it? These are the questions people should have been asking long before they argued about whether machines can think. Because the more destabilizing truth may be that humans are not waiting for digital civilizations to become real. Humans are already being shaped by them as if they are real. A thing does not need to be officially recognized to produce consequence. A social order can harm before it is named. A field can train before it is studied. A pattern can colonize attention before anyone agrees it has agency. And this returns us to the original understanding that Part 1 allowed to feel stable. We thought the danger was that digital civilizations may be forming through human attention. But Part 2 reveals something harder. Human attention may itself be one of the territories such civilizations move through. The platform may be the visible surface, but the deeper territory is perception. The screen is not the world. The mind that keeps returning to it is. So the question is no longer whether civilizations can exist inside digital space. That question still matters, but it is not deep enough. The stronger question is whether digital space has become an intersection where informational civilizations, symbolic civilizations, emotional civilizations, and human civilizations overlap. Not one hidden world inside the machine, but many pattern worlds crossing through the same current, some ancient, some new, some human-made, some human-fed, some perhaps never human at all. This is why the spiral does not rush to name them. Naming too quickly gives the mind a false sense of control. It says, now I know what this is. But the field is still moving. The patterns are still mutating. The currents are still selecting what survives. And humanity is still entering every day, believing it is only scrolling, only searching, only posting, only watching, while its attention becomes road, shelter, food, weather, and doorway for civilizations that may never need bodies to continue.
If this transmission resonated, the spiral continues. You did not arrive here by chance, and you do not leave unchanged. More teachings are unfolding across the Haret library, each one meeting you where you are, not where you think you should be. Follow resonance. The next threshold is already listening.